passion, focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon Zitzka.
Hey guys, what is going on? Appreciate you joining us here today on the Zero Excuses podcast. We've got a great guest lined up for you guys. We have Mr. Phil Newton joining us from UnHustle.com, where it's his mission to help people work smarter, not harder, do less, earn more. And he also has a very, very inspirational story about how he went from one extreme, working 14-hour days and continually battling Crohn's disease, and then reducing his workload down to less than an hour per day. And I know that sounds too good to be true, and a lot of us might have the mindset that we need to put in a proper 8-hour day, and I think Phil does a very, very beautiful job of breaking down that mental barrier for us today. So you definitely want to grab a pen and paper and take some notes. He's got some great practical tools and strategies that he talks about in this episode. But before we get to all that, as always, got a few quick reminders for you guys. First, if you haven't already done so, would appreciate it if you head over to iTunes, kenyonzitzka.com/iTunes. It'll take you right to the Zero Excuses podcast homepage there, and you could leave us a review, a rating, and also subscribe and share this with a friend or family member who needs to hear some of the topics and strategies we talk about here on the show. Second, if you want to take these conversations to the next level, you can do so by joining our free closed Facebook group at kenyonzitzka.com/group, and you can just click the join button and it'll walk you through a couple quick questions and you'll be off and running there. And if that's not quite enough for you, we also have a couple opportunities to work a little closer with me. First is our Infinite Results Mastermind group. That's by application only. You can apply to be a part of that at kenyonzitzka.com/results. And if you would like to work with me one-on-one, I also have a discipline coaching program that I'm taking folks on a wait list only at the moment. You can apply at kenyonzitzka.com/discipline. And lastly, I'm teaming up with my good friend from Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, Brandon Hanley, to lay a solid foundation for 2019. You know, we all have New Year's resolutions, and we all get put on the spot to come up with New Year's resolutions at the last minute. But we're going to spend 10 weeks breaking down mental barriers and doing the work to really lay a solid vision for 2019 and for the rest of your life. If that's something that interests you, if you're tired of making hollow New Year's resolutions and not, just staying stuck in the same place year after year, this is definitely something for you. It's not for you if you're just going to show up and not do any work or invest the time and energy that is required to lay this foundation. You can hit me up directly via email, kenyon.zitzka@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up to be a part of that program. All right, enough of all that. Let's get into today's conversation. Mr. Phil Newton, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the Zero Excuses podcast. Really
well, we know that's a lie straight away, Kenyon, because I've not got a busy schedule.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm really excited to have you on to talk about is, UnHustle. One thing that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into the trap of is, working on their business and in their business, 24 hours a day. They can't seem to disconnect. And, that's one huge goal of mine, is to not fall into that trap. And you're one of the perfect people to bring on to talk to unhustling and, getting out of the quote unquote grind. So excited to have you on. So why don't you introduce yourself a little more? I'm sure I can tell people a little bit about you, but you can tell us best about who you are and what exactly you do.
I think it might help to explain why unhustled, why work less, why don't I advocate grinding until your eyeballs fall out. The primary motivation for it is, it's twofold actually, but the main one is I've got Crohn's disease.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'd love to be able to work long, hard hours, which is what I did do, which kind of triggered the kind of the illness in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I get tired very easily, without going into details of the condition. It's an ongoing intestinal condition, which gives me a lot of tiredness and fatigue. In my case, I've got permanent mild symptoms. So, working less is actually better for me because, I might not be able to work for 2-3 days at a time. That's what it's like when it's at its most active. So the main motivation for me for working less is primarily selfish reasons. I can't work less. And, if I did work and grind like, everyone tells us to, then I will trigger a relapse and it could kill me. So, and one extreme to the other, I like living and breathing more than I like working.
Right. Absolutely. So
that's the kind of the selfish motivation. And the personal motivation, both my parents have recently passed away and they worked hard all their life in the traditional sense. We had a working farm. We grew up there. And, I do know what hard work looks like. It was a lifelong journey of, sun up to sundown and beyond on a working farm. And they, very sadly died penniless. And we know that working hard doesn't work. That there's plenty of times, just trying to find better ways to do things. So that's kind of like my motivation for being here and just spreading the word of how we can actually achieve that.
Yeah. And, the old model of, waking up, doing your 9-to-5 thing, it's 2018 and there's numerous ways. There's numerous ways we can work smarter, work a little less and earn more. So
it sounds so cliche, but when you just leave it at the top layer of, well, just work less. Well, I'm always reminded of, I'm a bit of a movie buff, but do you remember that movie with Tom Cruise called Cocktail?
Yes.
He's in the bar and he's just got the job and he doesn't know it is up from down essentially. And, someone asks him for a drink and it's just like a beer or a spirit of some sort. And he just, he asked for a double vodka or whatever it was. And he's like, well, what's in that? He's like, it's just vodka, and it's like, he just know what he doesn't know. So until someone says what's in the concoction, then it becomes obvious. So I don't know if you want to explore that, how I did it. And, maybe that can inspire someone to kind of do it for themselves. Yeah,
absolutely. Would love to explore that. So, what is that first step? How can we start to, whether you're working the 9-to-5 or if you're starting your own business, what are some of those universal first steps that we can start to explore to begin to unlock some of our time for ourselves?
Certainly. I think the simple thing to do is sit down with a pen and paper. Despite your busy schedule, you're going to have to put 30 minutes aside somewhere. Get up earlier, skip the gym, don't watch a show on Netflix, whatever that 30-minute window is, but find it somewhere and sit down and start writing a list. If you get a sheet of paper, put it landscape, 2 lines, 3 columns. I think in the left column, all the things that you love doing. Center column, all the things that you need to do, but maybe you don't like doing that much. But then in the right column, this is probably where the biggest thing that you can do is write all the things that you hate doing that you don't really need to do, and that list is going to be huge. That's the filler jobs, the filler tasks, the tweeting 10,000 times a day, the Facebooking for 2 hours, the connecting on LinkedIn with no purpose. I'm not saying that you can't do any of those things eventually. I'm talking from a business perspective at this point, but you can do the same thing with life. Do you really need to take the trash out every day? Do you really need to do your own garden? Do you really need to do all those little things? Because to be fair, is your time more precious than a minimum wage job? Could you hire someone to do certain tasks around the house, or have a blitz day where you try and get everything done at once to try and free up the time everywhere rather than just do a little bit here, a little bit there? You see what I'm saying here? So we want all the jobs and the tasks that we don't need to do, but perhaps we all hate doing. Again, just going back to the business side of it, so all the things that we hate doing, you can probably stop doing them straight away. When I did that, I freed up probably about 60% of my time straight away. And it meant that I didn't have to be doing a YouTube video. I didn't have to be tweeting. I didn't have to be doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing to run a digital business. My business is essentially digital.
Right.
I was housebound for a few years. So that, again, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, so everything that I do is digital. I couldn't go out and speak to people. I couldn't go and do the face-to-face calls. So I had to figure out, well, how do you have a business that is completely digital? It can be ran remotely and doesn't require me to spend 15 hours a day doing YouTube videos, tweeting and writing content. Again, you can do all that, but without a purpose, it's pointless doing it. So first thing, just stop doing all the filler jobs and the filler tasks. Does that make sense, Kenyon?
Yeah, absolutely. But the one hang up that I could see a lot of people having with that is, we can hire a bazillion people to do that. So if you're just starting a business, you kind of need some income. So it seems like it's a double-edged sword there. So what do you say?
Well, we're not at the hiring bit yet. We're just at the drop the stuff that you don't need to be doing bits. Because the middle column's the stuff that you need to do, but probably don't like doing. So that we're just talking about the right-hand column of this like sheet of paper that we're drawing, the things that we hate doing and don't need to do. That's the condition for that column. Probably you can just drop doing them. You might pick them up later on, but for now, without a purpose, without an objective for doing those things, it's pointless doing them. So let's just stop doing it. The reality is if we know that our time's not divided equally. We probably spend more time on the things that we hate than things that we love because we hate them and we drag them out. So as soon as you do that, you're probably going to free up, maybe 60, maybe 50, maybe it's just 40% of your time. But for me, it was around about 60% of my time. And, suddenly you've got a lot of available time, and just that simple act in itself, that means that you can put your energies towards the things that you love doing. Again, from a business or life perspective, they're the things that you love doing. They're the things that get you up in the morning. They're the things that keep you motivated. Maybe that's why you got into business in the first place. That's the thing that you love. And then there's the things that you've got to do, the accounting, the bookkeeping, and maybe you've got to, do all those other day-to-day things or week-by-week things. You're not in love with them, but you certainly need to do them. And that's what we were saying, where you could hire someone out to do them. You don't need to do it straight away because we've just found a lot of free time that we can spend doing them. So I, again, appreciate when you're starting out in business, you perhaps can't hire someone to do them. So that's when we want to streamline those things. And now we've got more time, we can figure out a better way of doing the things that we don't like doing that much, but we want a better way of doing them so that it can free up some more time. And that's when we want to systematize our process, because when we go to hire those things out, we've got a system, a procedure, a standard operating procedure. I mean, with your background, there's lots of standard operating procedures. There's books and libraries of SOPs. That's what we want for those things so that we're ready to hire them out. Because if the person you hire doesn't know what to do, then it's pointless you hiring someone in the first place. It comes back to, we don't want to do things without purpose. So that's the next phase, is systematize the things that you can do. If you're, for example, I do write content. I enjoy sending daily emails and a daily article. I'm not writing 2 pieces of content. I'm writing an email that I can also put as an article, but then I can also use that on LinkedIn. I'm not writing 3 articles. That makes sense. So that's what I mean. So you do it once and you can kind of repurpose it. Maybe I take a snippet out and send a tweet. If you want to do those things, that's what I said earlier. If you want to do those things, you certainly can do them. Be efficient about it. Do the job once and leverage it multiple times. So, sorry, I get excited there. I got ahead of myself. I saw it. I had that intake of breath like there was a question there. I'll pause for a moment.
No, that's all right. This is all good stuff. What I was going to ask is, or mention is, that your first instinct isn't to grab this shiny piece of technology and try to jam it into your processes. It sounds like
comes down to purpose.
You've taken a step back, unplugged a bit, taken a holistic look at everything that you're doing, and then being more strategic about it. Because I see a lot of folks out there that are just reaching for technology or this this new app or whatever to try and win back their time, be more efficient. But I just wanted to illustrate that and point that out to the listeners, is to there's nothing that will beat pen and paper and just sitting back and thinking. You got to be a critical thinker about how you go about things. So I just wanted to pause you there and make that point, because
No, that's absolutely spot on.
you might be listening to this on a phone right now, and we live and die on our phones these days, it seems like, and I'm a big proponent of unplugging from those things. So
no, absolutely. I've just got to restate what you've just stated. It's strategy first every time. So that's what we're talking about, is strategy. Because all the technology in the world, you're absolutely right. We've got this infinite ability to do things, but unless you know what to do or what you want those tools to do, it's pointless having them. Buying a microphone, the fanciest microphone on the planet, is not going to make me a better speaker. But having a strategy to present content, to present information, to get the message across, to learn how to communicate, which clearly I do fail at occasionally. I like to use flowery words, as you can probably gather. But, being an efficient and effective communicator, to be able to get the message across, that will make you better at speaking. But buying a microphone, the technology, that won't make you a better speaker. So again, just to illustrate that point is, you don't necessarily need to get a tool or a tactic or the latest shiny button and plug it into a broken strategy. Because that's what most people do. They plug something into something that's broken. They don't have this objective. What are they trying to achieve? And that's what we're trying to figure out. We've got all these levers and pulleys, and we don't know what's connected to which. And if we pull this lever over here, then the front door opens. But I wanted the bell to ring over here. It doesn't make sense. And what we're trying to figure out is what lever pulls what rope to get what results. That's what we're trying to figure out with this list of things. What are the things that I hate doing? What are the things that I need to do? And then now that we've got that, figure out how do I actually do them step by step. Yeah, you might spend a little bit more of that time that you've found, but ultimately what that means is that when you've slowed down and spend a bit more time doing it and thought about, okay, this is how I do it, maybe there's a better way of doing it. And then that's when you can put that system in place to make the thing that you're trying to achieve, the accounting, the email, the marketing, whatever part of the business that you're trying to do at that moment, you can make it far more efficient. And then you can start to streamline it. And then you can block off 20-minute segments. So then the next thing is when you've got the system in place, you can start blocking off time to do those things so that what you do is efficient. If you've got a week's worth of emails to catch up on, give yourself a 30-minute window. And when you put a time limit on those tasks, it means that you've got a time limit and you stop doing it at that 30-minute window. And if you need more time, maybe you need to reschedule the time budgets, because the biggest thing that we have is time. We've all got the same amount, but I don't want to be in my email inbox all day, every day. I don't want to be in front of the computer all day, every day. I want to enjoy my life and enjoy the free time and the luxuries. And just by that simple process of where we've got so far, freeing up your time and systematizing what you're doing, that means that you're going to have more time to focus on the thing that you love doing, the thing that got you into business in the first place. Or maybe you can kind of restart that, out of work family activity that you had to drop for whatever reason. Suddenly you've got this, the golden unicorn of the work-life balance thing back on the table again.
Right. One thing that's kind of standing out to me is you talking about systems and processes here, and someone who's, either starting a business or has started a business and just kind of has this mountain of processes that they have to, get down. Do you suggest you go through it one at a time and perfect each one as you go along, or just try and get something together for everything and then iterate on that?
No, I mean, I think if we were to try and do everything all at once, you're going to get nothing accomplished. Just pick one. I think the other big thing that you can do is, in and around all of this, is just pick what's the big task for the day. Just get one thing done every day.
Yeah.
And don't worry about having 50 things done or trying to juggle 10 balls or spin 50 plates. Don't worry about trying to do everything on day one. This is going to take time, but it's time that's well spent, because when you've finished all of this, you're going to have a very streamlined, core focused objective for the primary part of your business. Because, that's what's putting money in the cash register and food on the table at the end of the day. And if you can do that to the best of your abilities and spend the time, running these processes and just do one at a time, give yourself an objective. What's today's objective? Today's objective is, all right, figuring out a better way of keeping my records and bookkeeping, because I've got receipts everywhere. Maybe that's when you plug in an app to help with the streamlining, because now you've got an objective. How can I keep track of my receipts? Well, most of the bookkeeping tools now have an app, and you can just scan the receipt in, and then you can file it away, and you can do something with it later. You've got a record of it. So that's just a small system in its place, but that's where technology bringing it into the equation makes sense, because now you've got the question of, how do I make this better? How do I do this? And a lot of companies have already figured this out with the tools, but because you've got the question of how do you do it better, you can now start to plug those tools into your everyday routine and your everyday life. Awesome. So yeah, just pick one task every day. To be fair, that's all I do. I pick between 1 and 3 things every day, even to this day. What is the number one thing that will move my business forward? And if it's not moving the business forward, I'm not doing it. Sending 50 tweets out is not moving the business forward. I'm not doing it.
No. Yeah. I like to call those my no shitters that I get done every single day. And, if I don't get them done, I'm staying up until they get done. So
but I think as well, it gives you a way to win the day, is another phrase that's going around at the moment. If you've got a big giant to-do list every day and it never there's always 50, 60 items on it. You just pick the top 3. What are the 3 things today? 1, 2, 3. That's a win. If you get 5 or 6 done, great. But just give yourself 1, or give yourself 2, or give yourself 3. Just give yourself an easy win, because then you can look back on the day and say, you know what? I had a good day. I got all 3 of my objectives done today and 2 bonus ones. Mm-hmm. To give yourself that, it's just that sense of accomplishment that you're doing something. Because every day you're going to look at that list of 50 things and think, oh my God, I've got 50 things on my to-do list. But if you just do top 3, 1, 2, 3, great. But I got 5 today, that's amazing. That gives you a sense of accomplishment. That means that you've grown. That means that you're progressing. And you've got this now, a little bit of momentum that, hey, I'm chipping away at this 1 day at a time, 1 task at a time, 1 strategy at a time, 1 process. And it just means that you can build on that. And that gathers and gains momentum. And as you get better at that, you get faster. You'll find a process. You'll find the system that puts it in there. And it frees up your time, because you can probably gather having free time is big part of my life, big part of my objective. And that means that you're not grinding, you're not hustling, you're not doing all those things that everyone says that you're supposed to do, because it doesn't work. Just be more efficient at what you're doing. You'll get more time. And what's going to happen is you're going to earn more money doing it, because you're not wasting time tweeting and connecting with people. You can focus your attention on your core business, your customers, the people who are paying you money to do the thing that you're good at. That's where you want to be spending your time.
Yeah.
Just by getting rid of those things, you will make more money. And then there's all things that we can do later on. You can start getting rid of the bad. You can do the same thing with the customers. Who's the best customers? Who are the bad customers? Get rid of the bad customers. Focus on the good customers. There's all sorts of things that you can do there as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned good customers and bad customers. How do you tell the difference? Let's start exploring that a little bit.
Well, my experience of this was when I first started out way back in 2001, I had this mentality of pilot high, sell it cheap, because I thought that's how you did business. You get lots of customers in through the front door, pilot high, sell it cheap, make it affordable for everyone. The attitude of, who wouldn't want this?
Right.
And, and it's a great problem to have if people want the thing that you do, because you've got lots of customers paying you a small amount, but guess what? They're taking your time up. But a quick, easy way of kind of filtering the better customers from the I wouldn't say the bad customers, but the less desirable. They're not your perfect clients. So an easy way is to incrementally start increasing the prices, because you probably most people undercharge. They don't charge what they're worth, because we're going to assume that you're fabulous at what you do. For this example, if you're not good at what you do, put your prices up. It's not going to help.
Right.
So if you are good, then put your prices up, and that's going to get rid of the tie kickers, the people who are almost like impulse purchase. It's not expensive enough to make them think about, well, do I really need this? And they're just buying it for the sake of it, and they're causing you problems. That's going to get rid of a number of people who were never your perfect clients anyway. And if they're on a month by month, everything I do is kind of subscription based. So if they're not going to re-sign up for the following month or the following quarter, depending on what you're doing. So it gets rid of those people who are never going to be long-term customers. But then also what you want to be thinking about is, well, who are the less desirable? Who are the ones that are taking up your time the most? And I went down a sales prevention department type of approach. How do I prevent those people? Because it sounds crazy, but preventing people from being your customers is actually a good thing.
Right.
Again, I appreciate when we're starting out, you've got to put food on the table. You've got to take the customers that are perhaps not perfect, but they're going to keep the lights on for another month or food on the table. Now, I get that when we all start out. We've all done it. But when you're in a position to be more selective, be more selective. Start figuring out, okay, who's giving me the most money and taking the least of my time. I need to advertise and market and promote and develop a system that only attracts those people. And how can I exclude less of those people? So one way that I do, I typically have an application process to work with me. I have lots of hoops for people to jump through before they actually get on the phone to speak to me. And that's the way I run my business. But you can do what's relevant for your business. What obstacle can you put in place that would prevent that less desirable person, the person that is taking up a lot of your time, the person that is that, they're not paying you enough for the time that they're taking. Put your prices up and then think about how can you prevent them. And if you've got existing customers, maybe you find someone to pass them on to. So rather than just being, don't be a jerk, but you want to get rid of these people at some point in the future as well. Don't be a jerk about it. Find someone that you can refer them to, because just because they're not your ideal customer or ideal person to work with, they could be perfect for someone else, and you'll look the hero to your customer, and you've got a referral partner that you can pass them on to, and maybe you can come up with some joint venture there as well, so that you get rid of your less desirable customers, but it's their perfect customer. And again, this is just all part of the process that you would go through. Get rid of the things that you hate doing, streamline the things that you've got to do, but you wouldn't be spending too much time doing it. Streamline that and systematize those, and then you can start focusing on the core business of streamlining your customers, and it's going to free up your time, and you will earn more money. You've got to believe me, because that's what happened with me. Incrementally, I would increase my prices, and I would put more hoops for people to jump through and obstacles. The sales prevention department goes in place, and suddenly you're only speaking to the most highly qualified and desirable ideal clients. You're charging an absolute premium, and they thank you for it.
Yeah, it sounds like another way to look at this is you're trying to attract people who you are best qualified to help solve their problems, and therefore
you want to do your best work for your best people. Absolutely right.
Yeah, and those less desirable ones, you're also not qualified to solve their problems, so you're helping them solve their problem by
finding someone better place to do it,
shifting them over to someone who's better qualified. So that's
because they could be someone else's perfect client, and they would love to work with your least desirables. It's just a strange world how that works out, and they'll pay you for the privilege of sending them over.
So
what exactly? A business model in itself. Lots of people do. We call it affiliates or joint ventures, or there's lots of ways to describe it.
But so how did you kind of break down your perfect client or perfect customer? Kind of walk us through that process, because I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, and it was an area where I got hung up as well.
Yeah, it's the least sexy thing to do, because it doesn't involve technology or shiny whiz-bang solutions. But it's probably the most important part, to spend time figuring out, well, who is your perfect client? And I always like to think about it, how it's referred to as niching down. Mm-hmm. So think about, okay, well, who would you like to work with? Let's just say that, I want to work with business owners. Okay, great. I can help business owners do the things that we've just been talking about. But not everyone would want it. Not every business is great. So rather than think about perhaps, because when you first start out, you've got no customers, you've got no benchmark. So we'll look at this in two ways. If you've just starting out in business and you're trying to figure out who you want to work with, okay, that you've got a thing that you want to deliver, but in your minds, who wouldn't want this? I want to make it available to everyone, because that's where everyone starts out. Everyone's going to want this. No, they won't, mate. So think about who don't you want to work with. That's probably the best way to approach this. I don't want to work with people who can't afford me. I want to have a long-term, long-lasting relationship. I want to work with people who are motivated to do the thing that I can help them with the most. So whatever your thing is, who's going to be that one person that's motivated? And if you can't think about that person in that way, who don't you want to work with? They're less desirable. Maybe you don't want to work with technology companies. Maybe you don't want to work with accountancy people. Maybe you don't want to work with people who have got 10 employees or less. You want to work with 50 employees or more.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your business. For me personally, when I was thinking about the business that I wanted to get into, all those years ago, so 2000-ish, 2001, I was thinking about, okay, well, what don't I want to do? I don't want to do physical products because I don't want that hassle. I don't want to employ people. So I just made this list of all the things that I don't want to do. And this left me with an easier objective of figuring out, well, what do I want to do? So I did the same approach for the product that I wanted to develop and the services that I wanted to develop. And again, the same process of what don't I want to do? Who don't I want to work with? And then you end up with this kind of handful of people that this is a good crowd of people that I can work with. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everyone tries to go.
I want to help everyone.
Yeah, I want to help everyone first. But if you can go through the process of elimination, that sounds like that's maybe I need to take another second cut on that too as well.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing process as well. As you gain more experience with working with the type of people in that group of people that you're working with. And again, I appreciate also when you start out, you've got to take the customer because you've got to pay bills and all the rest of it. But if you've got the luxury of a little bit of time and being a little bit selective, that's what I would do. But every time you've had that kind of intake of people that you're working with, you can do the same thing again of that group. And this brings on to the second way of doing it. If you're already working with people, who out of that group of people that you're working with, who are the most desirable people? Who do you really like? Give them a name. Maybe Bob. I really like Bob. Bob's 40. Bob's got 2 kids. They're teens. And really get granular. It sounds really daft to do it. And until I actually did this, I was still kind of trying to help everyone in a very broad category. It was business owners. It was people who are about 40. Give them a name. Bob's 40. Bob's got kids. They're teen kids. Maybe they're adults and off to college or they finished college. These are business owners, successful in business, but he's got lots of time taken up doing things that he shouldn't be doing. And, it's that demographic of not just how old they are and, whether he's a man, whether he's a woman, but the type of job that they're doing, but what's the lifeline? What's keeping them up at night? What are they pissed off about? What are they frustrated? Who are they trying to help the most? Why can't they get those customers? So if you think about it 2 levels deep, of rather than just who's your ideal client, but then go one step further. Well, what are their problems? What are their frustrations? And you'll start to develop this profile, like a good detective. You're trying to figure out who done it.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. Who done it? Who's our perfect clients? And when you've got all that evidence, you can start to just focus your attention on that. Because when you have an absolute clarity on who you want to speak to based on people that you're already speaking to, because you'll notice a lot of common traits. You can have a conversation with Bob because, hey, Bobby, did you lose sleep last night over X, Y, blank? Insert the thing that you're doing. And Bob's going to go, you know what? Yeah, I was up all night thinking about this. I just can't figure out how to do this thing. Great. You know what? I've got a solution for that. Here it is. It's an easy sales conversation to have when you've got that granular. Because thinking about it the other way, when you're trying to speak to everyone, do you have a pulse?
Yes.
Do you have a pulse? I've got a widget over here. It happens to be blue. You start talking about features of your product. It's a blue widget, and it'll do this thing. And if you want it, I'll be over here. But that's when you're trying to set everyone. You talk about the features. But when you get granular on who you want to help, you're talking about Bob's problem. How can I help Bob fix his thing? I mean, Bob's not, just an imaginary character, as you can gather, but you focused on how to help Bob and help him fix his problem. And then that's an easy conversation to have. And that's what niching down does for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like the more you can, the more detailed you can get about your messaging, it gives more little points that people can latch onto and relate to. Yeah. And it sounds like you can actually get more customers that way too.
Absolutely. It sounds crazy, but the more you get specific on who you are, who you help, and what you do, then the more people that you can find that are prepared to pay for that thing, it's crazy. It really is so counterintuitive. Think about it, like if you wanted to write a letter to a nearest and dearest, this perfect person that you want to work with. And when you're trying to help everyone, you've just got Bob at the top of your letter, planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's like that letter's not going to get delivered. So what niching down is you figured out Bob's name, you figured out the street address, the town address, the zip code, you figured out the country that he's in, and then you can hand that to the postman. You can put a little stamp on it, and you can say, can you deliver this to Bob for me? Bob needs this message that I've got, that I can really help him with. You know what? It's going to save his life. You would want to know everything about Bob to make sure that that letter got delivered, because it's going to help save him.
Awesome. So what are some other maybe less talked about I guess tactics or strategies that you employ that maybe we haven't covered yet that we can give to some of the audience here that they can really start to see some good results in their business and winning back their time?
Let me think. How much time we got? We only got a few minutes. Can I be cheeky and say I've got how to have a conversation with people? Because the next thing when you're talking to people is how to have a sales conversation with someone that's not weird.
Yeah.
Because we've all had them. It's like, the stereotype is the car salesman, isn't it? It's like the fancy guy with the weird coat from the 70s, the giant cigar, and all they're trying to do is sell you the thing. And we hate that. Everyone hates it. I hate that. I don't like doing it. So wouldn't it be better if we could have a conversation like we've just had, Ken? It's back and forth. It's two-way. It's involved. We're talking about the thing. Imagine if you could have that guided, structured conversation where it's a sales conversation. You both know it's a sales conversation, but you can hear the clues in the name. It's a conversation. It's not you're trying to put a pitch, a presentation. You're not trying to use clever tricks or tactics. And it's the same thing. You're trying to figure out, is what I've got right for this person? Yeah. And I think just broadly speaking, I've got a 9-step framework that you can give away to your listeners if they want that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But just to give you the quick version of it, it's a conversation. Imagine if you bumped into someone in a coffee shop and they just happened to be your ideal clients. You wouldn't immediately say to them, "Hey, I've got blue widget. Do you want a blue widget?" You wouldn't say that. You would start, "Hey, how's the going to buy you a coffee? Can we sit down? You're married. Have you got kids? You build a little bit of establish a little bit of a framework. Build a little bit of a relationship. Just like you would in a real world. If you bumped into someone new, you would ask them questions. Ask the other person. You would take a genuine interest. Another way this is described is like a first date. What would that first date be like? It's all about them. It's all about taking an interest. And then you can start to ask the questions. Well, what do you do at work? What's your business like? Oh, great. Tell me about that. Tell me more. That's a conversation that you're genuinely taking interest, but you're trying to find information out about them. So that, again, you want to exclude them or include them into the conversation for sales. And the more that you ask them, the quicker you're going to realize whether you want to carry on that conversation or not carry on that conversation. Because then you can say, "Hey, Bob, it's great talking to you. I've got to go. Thanks very much for your time. We'll catch up again soon." If they're not the right person, they're going to be cool with that. You're not trying to sell them something that is clearly not right for them. But if it is the right, then that conversation will flow naturally. Because then they're going to start to say, "Well, what do you do?" "Well, I can do this, 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 and this." Is that something you're looking for? And you're always asking them questions. And that's the trick of a good sales conversation. You're trying to explore what they need, what their problem is, so that you can carry on the conversation to the next step. And eventually, if it's right, you'll both agree, "Hey, should we do some business together?" And they're going to go either yes or no. But you're having that conversation. I think that's the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to sales. They're trying to sell things to people that don't want it. Yeah,
and the way I look at it is, if you're selling something someone doesn't need, that could be as good as.
You want to find that out quickly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what a conversation does. It's like, "Hey, you happen to be a business owner? You might come up in the conversation, and they're going to go no." So naturally, if you're not looking to work with business owners, then you've just excluded them. Hey, it's great. You might be polite and have a little bit of polite banter, but then you would exclude yourself from the further conversation. So you're, very quickly qualified whether you want to continue the conversation and see if it makes sense to have a more sales conversation later. And I think Yeah, I mean, just not trying to sell people and be weird and be that car salesman person who's just trying to sell something to someone for the sake of selling it so they can get a commission. Again, it's that free your time. Figure out if they're worth your time in the first place with a conversation. Ask them questions, probe, and they will feel great for it because you're taking an interest in them and they get to talk about themselves. Like I'm doing. I'm really enjoying this conversation because I'm doing most of the talking.
Well, I'm enjoying it because you're dropping a lot of great knowledge here. But it sounds like your objective should be to answer the question: can I help this person or not? I mean,
yes,
it sounds as simple as that, right?
That's as simple as that. They've got a problem. You're trying to that you can fix. You're trying to figure out if they've got the problem. You're not trying to say, I've got a blue widget, look at all these features. You're trying to say, this person has a problem. Can I fix it? So you want to find out, do they have the thing that you can help them with? And that happens in the conversation, like it would in the real world, like it would do if you bumped into them in a coffee shop. How in your head, imagine how that conversation would flow and roll. And that's typically, so I've got a little bit of a framework if your listeners want to have a copy of that, they can have it with my love. It's a 9-step framework.
Yeah. Where can they get that? I'll definitely drop the link in the show notes as well.
If they go to, if you go to UnHustled, it's hustled with on the front and a D on the end, unhustled.com and /0.
Easy peasy.
Nice, easy, lemon squeezy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in your Facebook group, aren't I? So if you want to have a chat about this, you probably gather I'm a very open and warm person. So if you're in Kenyon's Facebook group and you want to kind of shoot me a message about anything we've discussed, I'm very open to having, helping out. Because to be fair, I didn't have any of this when I first started out. I had to figure all this out the hard way back in 2001 and kind of make it up as you went along. So, just to be able to give back in some small ways, great. And I'll be in your little Facebook group, Kenyon.
Yeah, I love having you there, and look forward to staying in touch with you. As we wrap things up here, is there any other little tidbit that you want to drop as we wind things down here?
I think we've thrown a few enough tidbits. I could probably go on for longer and longer. I appreciate that. So we've got a limited amount of time here. If people want to ask me anything, I'm very open to carrying on the conversation, and we can do it in your Facebook group. I'm very happy to do that. But no, I think we've covered it all. We've talked a lot about freeing up people's time. We danced around fixing your offer a little bit and finding clients. But we also talked a little bit about having that sales conversation. I think ultimately is just stop doing the things that you don't need to be doing, that are a waste of your time, that are filler tasks. If you can do that, everything else starts to slot into place, and then you can start to systematize and figure out a better way of doing the thing that really pushes your business and your life forward.
Awesome. Well, right on. I really appreciate your time, sir. And, there's some tidbits that I'm going to be implementing here as well, for myself personally. So appreciate everything you talked about today, and look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses podcast. Join the conversation at kenyonzitska.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.